This is We the Sales Engineers Podcast, show 111.
Welcome to We the SEs Podcast, the show for sales engineers by sales engineers with your host, Ramsey Majaba.
What's up, SE Nation? Welcome back to another episode. We have a special guest straight from New York. It's Ji Chow. Did that work? Did I just do the Saturday Night Live thing? I just came up with it on the spot. You just figured out what I was doing.
Good call. No, good
yeah. So, Sales Engineers of New York co-founder Ji Chow is on the show, and it's an awesome show where we talk about being a co-founder. No, we didn't talk about being a co-founder. We talked about SENY, but we mostly talked about specialists versus generalist sales engineers. So, if you're interested in that topic, this is the topic for you. It's good to know that my house is not going to crack down on me because my children are running right upstairs. If you hear them, I apologize. If you don't hear them, then never mind. Just edit this part out in your brains. How's it going, Benny?
It's going well.
Maybe I should have started with that. How you doing, my friend?
No. This is a special case. I think that was an excellent reference. It's going well. I'm looking forward to seeing you all or hearing you all on the other side of the show. Covered a wide, like you said, a wide array of topics. It's always cool to get someone else who not only is an SE, but is also, somebody very involved in another community of SEs, similar to and very complementary to our own. So, it was very enjoyable and very insightful show in many respects.
All right, before we jump into the show, let's do the quick tip of the week. Benny?
Quick tip of the week. Make sure.
So Benny is not aware that I put him on the spot, just FYI. But here's the quick tip that I had prepared, so that Benny doesn't get too embarrassed. Not that he gets embarrassed. Benny does not get embarrassed. So if you think I'm being mean to him, I will try harder. So a quick tip of the week. This is a community for sales engineers, and a community, not just me, not just Benny. So if you have any blogs you want to write up, the Friday YouTube video from the day I'm recording it, which is a couple weeks back, I don't know if that was English again. Anyways, I have a guest YouTuber where Nathan Freely talked about his office setup, which is something we talk about today as well. So check it out. But yeah, that's the quick tip of the week. If you have blogs, if you want to participate in this community, you want to share some of your own knowledge, then by all means, hit me up and let's work something out.
Like that. No, it's better than my tip. So
yeah. What was your tip? I'll kind of put you on the spot. I'm interested in knowing.
Oh, well, so I was actually cycling through what would be a good tip. There were a whole bunch I had in my head. Some were...
All right, let's jump into the show.
I like that. It's funny.
Mr. Chow, how are you?
Hello, Randy. How are you?
I'm good. Do you mind stating your name for the record?
My name is Ji Chow, and I am right now at F5 Networks as a specialist in pre-sales.
Specialist. All right. Well, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
My pleasure. What does specialist mean exactly when you say that?
So basically, it's rather than having kind of a one-on-one to an account manager, I support a team of SEs as kind of an overlay. So specifically, I support subject matter of DevOps. So basically helping customers with automation, DevOps type topics, special projects, stuff like that.
Okay, so we've talked to maybe one specialist early on in the podcast lifetime. I don't think Benny was born yet. So
Brian was also a specialist from Cisco. Oh no, he's a generalist.
Yes. Okay, maybe we should start with that since Benny doesn't seem to know the difference. What's the difference between a generalist and a specialist?
I think I guess it depends on where you come from each organization, but at F5, generalist is kind of the person aligned to account, at least for me, since I support financial service majors, which really means each account person and SE pair has a specific list where they cater to, and so that's a generalist because they really have to address the full breadth of the portfolio that FI has, so which includes Nginx and Shape. So I specifically, it's kind of a weird specialization because it's really not really a product specialization. It's more of a discipline / culture,
Okay.
depending on how you define DevOps. But so that's what I cover. So it's really either specializing in a product versus, or a kind of discipline versus, addressing first line concerns from a customer.
Okay, that's a good definition. Maybe another definition from you, if you don't mind, for people that aren't as technical, myself included. Do you mind maybe explaining a little bit more as to what DevOps even is and what that means?
Yeah. So DevOps is I guess there's two definitions. The enterprise corporate definition is anytime there's like automation involved, and it's kind of like the technology umbrella that encompasses things like CI/CD, meaning building a pipeline for developers to automatically push code into their apps. But I think if I leave it at that, I'll get a lot of hate mail from like true DevOps people, because the original intent of DevOps is more of a cultural mindset within an organization, right? It's meaning that the core of it is really getting rid of silos within an organization. So true DevOps really. So I always joke with DevOps people like I don't really like my title, because the whole point of a DevOps is that you don't have a title or role. Because a real DevOps organization is like everyone helps each other. Like, doesn't matter if you're the app developer, you're NetOps formally. In the new world, everyone is kind of co-responsible for everything else. So that's kind of the long answer.
So if like in my world, there used to be someone who writes the code, someone who tests the code, and then support. Testers usually find mistakes and send it back to the designers, but now it's kind of one and the same, where they test their own code and just speeds up the process. Does that sound about right?
Yep, exactly. So yeah, so the people who are like, I guess the idea of DevOps is really, there's no tester, there's no developer. If you push your code to a production state, you have the responsibility to make sure your code is production stable, or you understand the production person's needs, and then get feedback from them, right? So it's kind of like dismantling the silo that used to be, I throw things over the wall to testing, and not my department anymore, which you could see as a result of that, as an organization, that would kind of like crush things. Yeah.
So you are a specialist within that domain of DevOps. What's your relationship with the generalist account team? Do they bring you in? Do you own your own accounts? How does it work?
Yeah. So normally it's the SEs, the generalist SEs will bring me in if they have kind of a project or questions from an automation team. I will say that there are times where I use my own network to kind of do I guess a divide and conquer, or maybe like a lead with DevOps scenario, because the reality is most organizations, they do have these silos that we talk about. Yep. So it becomes barrier in sales. So sometimes easier to lead with, hey, you may know F5 as an X, but let me just tell you that, in my world, this is how, we're leading with, right? Versus, it kind of dismantles their kind of mental objections if you lead with a specialist in mind.
Right. Yeah. Generally speaking, I find most customers think that every SE they meet is a specialist in everything. So a lot of times SEs end up saying, let me get the specialist, and so he can come and ask you, or she can come and answer your questions. And that confuses a little more. So having a specialist on hand is very beneficial. However, generally speaking, you own a bigger territory than the generalist SE. Does that sound right?
Right. So I cover North America, and so obviously it's impossible to kind of be the first line for every single customer need. So usually that's kind of the vetting process, is the generalists. We'll make sure it's like, the DevOps type type subjects that they bring me in.
Very cool. So speaking of being a specialist, I'm sure nobody just, gets out of school and then all of a sudden, or maybe actually there might be some cases, but people typically don't just become specialists without some sort of a foundational knowledge of things. And maybe I'm just assuming things, but what was your journey to being a specialist? What did that look like? What caused you to either want it or what got you the foundation to be able to be one?
Yeah, so my background is actually way back then is as an app developer. So I was kind of a practitioner, but I guess back then when I was a developer doing like Java, PHP, web-based programming, there wasn't really a term of DevOps. But having kind of a developer experience gives you empathy for kind of developer needs, even though that's just one aspect of it. So I guess that would be I wouldn't say a necessity, but definitely helps to understand the context of where they're coming from. Because, DevOps is mostly about pushing code for application building. And then I've been a generalist SE in the past. So I've been a SE for App Dynamics, which is, application centric. So just always been around kind of cloud technology, DevOps. But also, that's always been something that's of interest to me, kind of like development type technology. So it's always been kind of an interest. So I think it's always important to enjoy the technology you're focused on. That always helps make the job easier.
So other than the roles of the SE being a little bit different, what is it that drew you towards being a specialist versus being a generalist?
I would say for me, it's the more interesting topic within our portfolio, right? The automation.
Okay.
I get to play around with all the cool cloud technology. So it's kind of weird because sometimes I feel like I'm selling and teaching and promoting solutions that aren't really mine, are our companies.
Okay.
So I'm because we have partner ecosystems that are catering to the DevOps process that the customers who are DevOps folks, they want assurance that it works kind of with the ecosystem tools that they already use. So that's kind of fun. It's not just kind of like our product. You kind of have to have a breadth of the ecosystem at large. So I talked with the Red Hat Ansible SAs, the Azure SAs, the HashiCorp guys. So it's kind of fun because you kind of learn, not only the tools but also the other SEs and SAs in the ecosystem.
And maybe just a quick point of clarification: SA being solutions architect.
Yes, sorry, SA is solution architect. Typically, I don't know, for some reason the cloud and DevOps space, the more tech focused, it's the term tends to be SA.
Okay.
You guys notice that?
So in networking, at least in my former company, a solution architect is a post-sales person who builds a network for a company after they've bought the equipment, which I always found weird how they choose which equipment to buy. But that's it.
Yeah, there's definitely no consistency. We Ramsey, you should be like the person that puts their foot on the ground and say, let's have a consistent term across the industry.
Yeah. Which term would you like? Let's start voting. Actually, in the comments section, where if you're watching this on YouTube or on the show notes, leave a comment about your favorite terminology, and we'll do a vote. How about that?
That's a good idea.
So go ahead.
So sales engineer, systems engineer, solutions engineer.
Yep.
Solutions consultant, solutions architect. There's a lot of choices out there.
Oh, pre-sales. In Europe, it's mostly pre-sales.
Oh, is really?
Engineer. Yeah, that's what they're called. From what I understand, mostly in Europe, it's pre-sales engineer.
In Canada, we have rules where if you're not an engineer, so myself, for example, you can't have that in the title. So our company is changing that as well to not even have engineer. So you already mentioned like solutions consultant or advisor or whatever.
By the way, he just showed his finger because in Canada, you put a ring, an iron ring on your index, on your pinky finger of your writing hand. So if anyone's watching YouTube, I have mine. I just gained a little bit of weight, so it doesn't go in. But I'm an engineer, so it's easy for me to call myself an engineer. But you have to be a professional engineer, not any kind of engineer. But all right.
I've never heard that. So you get so when you graduate, you get a ring, a pinky ring.
Yeah, pinky ring. Well, it's called an iron ring. It sounds more formidable, but it's actually a pinky ring. You're right.
It's meant to be a reminder, though, right? Because there was a really bad bridge collapse, if I'm not mistaken, in one of our provinces, or like a state, essentially. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, it had to do with an engineering flaw or something. And so the ring is supposed to be a reminder of the responsibility you hold as an engineer to do stuff properly.
All right, we're picking that up. I guess you're editing this one. So
that makes sense. What's your engineering in, Ramsey?
Mine, communications engineering, Carleton University of Ottawa. Yeah. We're both Carleton grads, although I did my master's somewhere else. Anyways, so what's your relationship with the generalist SEs? How do you define who gets your attention, and how do you help them not need you as much?
Yeah, so they just hit me up on Slack and Teams, and I help. But yeah, in all seriously, I guess it's not. I think, what do I have? I have like I think about 18, maybe like 14 SEs. So it's not super big where it's not. Just like any other pre-sales work, it's kind of ebbs and flow in terms of your workload. So it's really more of a case by case. If I'm kind of swamped, then I'll ask for some more time in terms of dedicating on something. But I would say if there are kind of competing projects, it'd be, I'd do some more qualification and say, hey, like, what's your time frame? And I'll weigh that against, some other work streams, as well as kind of deal size and stuff like that. So it really depends. And if it's obviously something quick I can answer, then I'll help them right away. So it's more of a case by case. But I will say that there are SEs who, can answer and can do all the stuff that themselves. So I hear from them less because they can handle most of the things. And then some people are ramping up on it. So that's a factor as well.
Okay. Quick question about that. I think you mentioned earlier that you have a team of SEs as well. Are you all a team of specialists, or is there a mix of both generalists and specialists on this team?
No, I meant the team I support, which is the financial service SEs. But however, each kind of, we're split. There are peers who are also DevOps SAs, and they cover different, what we call verticals, which is, a different kind of either industry or a slice of the region.
Okay, cool.
So to follow up on that, the reason I was asking you this, I find like we have specialist SEs behind us as well.
Yep.
And I found that if I have enough deals with a specific subject, then I'll learn that and I won't need my specialist SEs as much. And then for the smaller deals, I tend to bring in the specialist SEs, except the specialist SEs prefer to work on bigger deals because that's worth more of their time, because you have a larger quota than most other generalist SEs. So how do we, as a generalist SE, how do I balance the fact that because I need to know whatever you're teaching, like how do I balance bringing you in versus not bringing you in?
Yeah, so my approach is, I get that question from the SEs too. But I mean, everyone's different, and my approach is, hey, just ask, right? And I'll tell you. Don't be afraid to ask, because I'll tell you if I have kind of priorities that are ahead of time, and I'll let you know why, and I'll also give you a quick assessment of what the direction you should look into. So give them alternatives as well. So that's my approach, is to basically say, open door. I'll be the one who will tell you if I'm not busy or not. So that's to be how I roll.
If I were to give a example, it's an open door until someone comes in and you just shut it in their face.
Right, but I don't like to think of it as deferring to a later time, not shutting the door.
Okay, that's good. Yeah, well, I guess it depends on the specialist and depends on what you have to do. I've noticed that if a specialist is involved in a lot of proof of concepts, they tend to not have time. If they like enable proof of concepts, like they're there to support the local sales engineer, they tend to be available for a larger audience. At least that's my assessment. I want to talk about compensation for a second, if that's okay. I don't know if you're willing to share, but generalist SEs own accounts and they get paid for those accounts. What do you get paid on in terms of commission?
Yeah, so I'm my number is the vertical. So it's like my vertical is financial services majors, which means basically it's across the whole region. So basically it's the same number as the sales director.
Okay.
The whole
so it doesn't matter what product they sell as long as it's within that vertical. And
as long as the team does well, then I do well.
Okay, so you don't even, sometimes you might not have to participate in any of the sales engagements. You still get paid for that.
Yep, correct. And the other thing is, most of our DevOps focused products, we give them to customers for free. So but that's good and bad. I kind of like the fact that because obviously as SCs and pre-sales, we get that trust because we're not the sales guy. So I get like a double dose of that because, there's truly nothing that I can sell. So, I'm just all about the solution. So that's kind of refreshing and nice. But yeah, in terms of how I'm incented, it's more, helping specific projects, right? Of DevOps type situations.
And are you the only specialist in the financial vertical for your organization?
Yep, I am. So there's how we're structured is we have let's see. Yeah, so I'm the one of two overlays. We have also a cloud SA in our vertical. So it's myself and him. And then, our vertical is actually fairly small compared to others. So we have like what's called majors, which is, everything else outside of, Fed and FinServ, since we're kind of more of a breakout. There's far more accounts for that, and there's only one overlay. So, to your earlier questions of how do you kind of prioritize that, they probably have that situation more than myself. So I'm able to handle it since it's, generally smaller.
Okay, so just to clarify, what's in your control does not actually bring revenue in itself to the company, but could lead to other sales that
correct, not directly, correct.
Yeah. Okay. Wow, that's interesting, and you enjoy it. You like that, it seems.
In other words, we're not a company that sells DevOps tools. We're network security. But we want to highlight the fact that our product set can work in a automated ecosystem within customers. So obviously, if you establish that, then they expand. The usage is greater, right?
Yeah, sticky automation. Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
I like that. I'm gonna take that, sticky automation.
Well, that's what we have in our industry. Basically, if you get the customer to automate your equipment, it's sticky. They're not gonna go anywhere, right? It makes it harder for them to reinvest the time to automate somebody else. That's pretty much it.
Sure. I do want to quickly ask, just because like as the only SA or in your vertical, and even though you are kind of just solutioning, you don't really have to worry too much about the selling part of it necessarily. I'm just curious, how do you allocate your time, or how do you prioritize things? Like, what's your measure of where you're going to spend your time?
Yeah, it's a good question. So, beside, obviously in terms of priority, the customer needs come first. So if anything pops up, you kind of have to be flexible for that. and that's not always something you can predict and kind of allocate ahead of time. But I do make sure that, especially lately, because everyone is sick of Zoom.
Yeah.
As I was talking to you guys earlier, I've been trying to make videos that are dedicated to enablement. So rather than subjecting the SEs to, hey, let's get on another Zoom where you'd have to sit through, I've been trying to create content where they can consume at their leisure, right? Because that, frankly, that's how I like to consume. I like to watch your podcast at 2x speed.
2x.
Pause. 1.5 is
that's usually my go-to. 1.5.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And then I can pause when I need to. So I'd rather do the same for the audience. So I dedicate time to do that, especially nowadays. And then obviously enabling myself, because you want to be at the forefront of the next releases of what the product team is coming out with, because that's what the SEs kind of look for you in terms of expertise, in terms of guidance for the customers. So I would say, a good, percent of time goes into that.
Interesting. So the fact that you I love the fact that you decided to kind of find a new way to start to provide content to your teams or to your audience more efficiently, especially in a time where, the teleconferencing fatigue is very real, and can be exhausting as well. But I am curious, how receptive was your audience to those videos and to the content? So as opposed to being able to get that back and forth with you maybe in the past and while wildly inefficient compared to what you're doing now, how have they found them? And do you find that being kind of the future? Do you find that being a future activity you'll continue to engage in because they're finding it to be good? Yeah,
I've only just started doing so. I rolled out to a few who previewed it, and they really like it. I think it's a more efficient way of delivering content and messaging, and it's also the direction of our company. So as a company, I'm very fortunate to work for a company that's kind of supporting the new, quote unquote, digital selling world that we live in. So for example, as soon as kind of like the whole shutting down office happened, they've equipped all the SEs, SAs with these key lights. I don't know if you've seen these Elgato key lights, which is like, basically a LED light, to make sure you're appearing kind of, which is actually I don't have it on. So if I turn it on, I can show you the difference.
Oh, damn. Wow.
Yeah. That was a little too bright, but see, now I have it on. That reminded me. I guess I should have started with that.
You can turn them on right now if you want. I have two of those, but I bought them for like doing YouTube videos.
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen YouTubers, like professional YouTubers who've been doing this for a while, have lamps with old towels on them, old white towels.
Yeah, so that works too.
Yeah, like you can go to Home Depot, get like a $20 light and put a towel on it and you're good to go. But it's nice that your company's splurging on stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah, so I got to commend F5 for doing that, for not only kind of making sure we're safe, but really investing in the digital selling, really leaning into it, and then providing us the equipment. So, but that also doubles as, kind of like low-grade production equipment. Everyone has a production house in their own office now, right? So they really have no excuse. But as a company, we're moving toward that direction, in that it's more of a, everyone has the mentalities, everyone at the ground level has something to contribute that's valuable. We have, tools that we can just post on internally to share that knowledge. So I think as a company, we're moving that direction.
So has those, I don't know if that's English, those lights that you're using right now, have they made a difference in terms of when you're meeting customers? Do they comment on that, or is it unnoticeable, or do you feel like it's making a positive impact on the customer?
Yeah, I think so. I think one thing that I noticed is if you have your camera on in general in Zoom, the customer, the person you're meeting will tend to, even if it's off, they'll turn it on.
Yeah.
So that's always good to have eye contact. They don't necessarily comment on the light. However, I get a lot of comments on the basketballs in the back.
I wanted to ask you about that.
So So that's actually, speaking of YouTube, right? I was watching one of the YouTube like how-tos.
Yeah.
One solid recommendation was, you know, in the background, make sure it's tidy, but also make sure you have something that that makes you relatable and, you know, is kind of reflective of your character. So I'm a big basketball Brooklyn Nets fan. So I always get like, hey, what's that? What are those signatures in that ball? So that's always a cool icebreaker that they initiate, right?
Yeah.
So, so I get that a lot.
Yeah, I put these books behind me so people can ask me what are those books, but no one asked me that. But for some reason, when they see my kids' toys behind me,
Oh, cool.
they talk about that.
Hot Wheels garage.
Yeah,
Nice.
yeah, pretty much. I have a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old, so they end up when I'm working, sometimes, especially now, they come and play behind me as I'm talking to customers, which is always interesting. Yeah, they've never done that, but they come and work behind me during the day. So. Yeah, and in terms of lights, no one notices this. Like, if you have it turned on from the beginning, no one says anything. But right now, you just turn it on. We saw a big difference. So that's a good tip for people to just use lights. And are you using like the laptop camera? It doesn't seem like it's a laptop camera.
No, I have the I think it's the Razer. It has like that ring light on it.
Okay.
So it's not the built-in.
Okay, yeah. So
And then I got one of these. Not as fancy.
Okay, yeah. So same here. I have a Logitech external camera and this ATR 2100 USB camera or microphone, and those make like I use them with customers. And on my camera, I have a post-it note of a smiley face. So I try to look at my camera most of the time. But it becomes so hard because I'm looking at this and I can see Benny nodding, but you are a little bit lower on the camera, so I can't tell your body language.
Right.
So I'm always drawn. So I have to find a way to move you. Can I move you? Can I? All right, Benny, I'm gonna get rid of you on my Zoom.
Yeah, that's tricky. Is maintaining the eye contact because you gotta float the face.
Yeah, and they say you have to like maintain eye contact for 80% of the time, or at least look at the camera for 80% of the time. But I can't tell if you're mad or happy or whatever. So that these are the struggles that I'm trying to figure out. So
you know, I'm starting to I'm kind of torn. You know, I as a recipient of someone like I'm meeting with, obviously you want eye contact. Yeah. However, back to what we were talking about, like Zoom fatigue. I've been reading research and why we get Zoom fatigue. It's because it's kind of like, you know, when you play video games. When you have motion sickness, you think that you're somewhere, but you're moving and you're not. It's kind of it's like the Zoom version of that, where the person is there and you're trying to engage them, but it's digital. So then your mind is like, oh, it's real, but it's not real.
Yeah.
So, they actually recommend you not be too concerned about having the eye contact. So I'm okay with not, you know, for the sake of the Zoom fatigue.
Yeah. I think about it in real life, you're not staring at your customer. Like if you're sitting across the table from them, you're not staring at them all the time. You're looking at, you're writing down, you're looking at the whiteboard. So it makes sense. But every once in a while, like every 5 seconds, look up for a second, do a count to 3 and then look away. I find that very useful. So
yeah, maybe for the intro and when you break out, you know, do the eye contact. But between that, you know, I think these days it's anything goes and it should be acceptable.
Yeah, Peter Cohen says he turns on his camera to introduce himself, and then he turns it off for a demo or whatever. If it's a discussion, that's fine, but if it's a demo, turn it off. What else have you been doing in the digital selling age, like in terms of trying to connect with your customers more, with your teammates? How are you surviving, not going insane, basically?
Yeah, I would say. Not in terms of not going insane is I definitely feel more you know Zoom fatigue, but also just kind of it's I think being home and not having to worry to get one place to another, you have more time to do focused work.
Yep.
So because you have more time to do it, you tend to do focused work for longer periods of time, which gives you fatigue in general. So it's hard to I guess what I've been more conscious of is taking breaks, you know, Whereas in normal times, you kind of have natural breaks, right? People interrupting you in office or something like that. So that's one thing. In terms of digital, I would say that encouraging folks to be more communicative, in Teams and Slack, stuff like that. In the earlier times, we were doing a lot of virtual happy hours, but I'm kind of happy hour out right now.
Yeah,
it's good once in a while, but the novelty kind of wore off for me, at least personally. And then on the weekends, I used to, be on screen, but now I consciously try to, not even use my phone if possible, and not do Zoom. So, but I guess balance is one of the things with the changing times.
No, that makes sense. I definitely appreciate that. Big fan of just balance in general in life. And I find that, at least right now anyways, that I don't want to say I have more balance than I did in the past, but sometimes it feels that way where, exactly what you described, where when you're kind of working all day, then you eventually go home if you're not working from home. I don't know. I personally defaulted to like, I'm tired. I've been working hard all day and somewhere else. I want to kind of sit down and watch a show or something, or I want to sit down and like play on my phone or play some video games. And I won't necessarily, or I might neglect some things at home. But now anyways, I feel that while I'm working during the day, I'm still able to kind of do some things at home, sure, here and there. But after the workday is done, and sometimes it bleeds a little bit later than it normally would. But as soon as that's done, I find that because this is kind of the new normal, and because we're so inundated by looking at screens all the time now, there's just, I don't know, I have far more of a desire to like read a book or do other things. And so just, finding that balance one way or another. And I guess it's the same idea as not maybe listening to your favorite song too many times, because you might eventually get sick of it. You almost have to kind of have a little bit of variety in what you're doing in order to make things work nowadays.
Absolutely.
Just two comments. Benny, stop reading Twilight. And the second thing, the way I do defocus is I go on YouTube, put on my favorite song or whatever song I want to listen to at that time, and put it in loop. And to the point where it just becomes background noise and I don't hear anything. It just focuses. And these headphones are pretty good. Benny's hearing my kids running around. I'm not. So by the way, if you're listening to this and you hear kids running around, those are mine. Don't worry about it.
I don't hear a thing. But what do you have on loop? Celine Dion, since you're Canadian?
Well, I'm technically Lebanese Canadian up until I lived here. Right now I have Postmodern Jukebox, Dream On, featuring Morgan James. I'll put a link in the show notes. So, I had to look that up. Have you guys heard of Postmodern Jukebox?
I have no idea what that is.
All right, I'll put a link to the show notes.
But I just nodded, pretending I did.
All right, well, cool. I found out about them recently, so I'm not that much ahead of the curve. So how long have you been in SE in the SE world?
So in pre-sales, I've probably been let's see, I would say 7 years.
Okay.
Yep.
So for the first year and a half of my life, I didn't know if I was doing things right. I didn't have a mentor. I didn't have anything. How did you know you were doing the right thing? And how do you help people now understand if they are doing the right thing or the wrong thing?
Yeah, that's a good question. In the beginning, I don't think I knew, same as you. I think I remember when talking to Chris White when we were doing the SCNY, when he was on the show. Yep. I shared a little bit on how, I think that there's a common up and down that SCs go to when they start. I think everyone feels like totally inadequate on, what they have no idea what the job is.
Yep.
And then, they start understanding the technical product, and then they get a little bit cocky because they can answer every single customer question. But then they start neglecting the sales aspect of it, and that's our primary job. So I think I definitely went through that, having, inferiority complex, and all of a sudden, why do I need my AE? I can do this whole job. Why does he get paid more than me? And then it's like crash and burn. Oh man, I really forgot what my primary job is, and I really bombed that one.
So did you notice that you were crashing or burning, or did it take somebody else to tell you? How did you figure that out? That's the part that most people don't understand. if you're hitting quota, you're doing good, right?
Yeah, when I look back, I kind of remember some key moments. Yeah, I would have to say that it probably came from like either my AE or somebody in the room and be like, gave me a reality check and be like, why did you go this direction? But yeah, I would say that I didn't realize it for myself until someone brings it up, and then you kind of do some self-reflection.
Yeah.
Speaking about, well, I guess self-reflection is probably a great little segue into it. As a specialist now, you obviously have a pretty deep knowledge or understanding not only of your solution, but your industry as well.
Mm-hmm.
For people that are maybe interested in becoming specialists or have thought about it, what would you say the path is, or the potential path is, out of being a specialist? Or is there one? Can you potentially be a specialist in something else after already having been a specialist as you are? Or is it very easily transferable to other areas in an organization? What's your perspective on all that?
Yeah, I think back to the earlier point, as long as you follow your interest, no matter what your title or role is, your job becomes easier. And then if that kind of passion is a specific specialization, I think that'll translate very easily to become a specialist, right? So for example, even prior to me being a specialist as an SE, I always generalist SE at one point, I always gravitated toward kind of cloud technology, public cloud technologies. And, that helped me be it wasn't the intent to be a specialist, but I was just basically following my interest. And, anytime you do that, I think that's a great way to segue into it, right? But in general, that just makes work better if you just follow whatever you're interested in.
Were your customers also interested in cloud technologies, or did you go like customers are interested in product A, you focus on product?
Yeah, a little bit of both. I think that there was needs from the customer side, but there was also needs internally, right? If to kind of take the reins of, let's say, internal projects related to it. That's always a good way and opportunity to start, is
Nice.
to just kind of take on internal projects that has it's within that specialization.
That's excellent. I've never thought of it like that. That's pretty good. So we're about to head off into the not so fire on, but you did mention something that I want you to dig into a little bit more.
Yep.
What in the world is SENY?
So SENY is Sales Engineer of New York. So we're a community of pre-sales professionals, and also we welcome folks who are interested in being in pre-sales or just the career in general. And we are formally in the old world a physical meetup where we gather together at least once a month, where we talk about different topics related to SEs and pre-sales. And it's not necessarily technology focused. It's more the things that make us better, best practices, as well as it's a time to network, to grow your network, because for everyone's career, your personal network is important, and it's a space to kind of grow it. But it's also it's a good outlet for meeting with your peers outside your own organization. So it's a good way to kind of check your own company's bubble, if you will, right? Because you can ask, possibly even your competitors, SEs, and it's a safe space, right? There's no kind of animosity. There's also a safe space in the sense that we have pretty strict rules about, no recruiting, no kind of profiteering. So I think everyone appreciates that, the fact that the founders and I, we focused on, not profiting ourselves. It's really just about the community, right? It's really what we get our satisfaction from building the community, everyone helping each other out. So we're really proud of the fact that we've grown to 500 members now. And, but more importantly, we have a Slack channel, we have a LinkedIn group, and everyone's just kind of chiming in and helping each other out, right? So I think that's really kind of the key part, is that it's really a community where everyone can contribute and make each other better.
And you recently had Peter Polizzi, like yesterday.
We're
recording this on the 7th of May. You had him yesterday. I wasn't able to attend, but I'm looking forward to watch the video afterwards. So you guys are getting like important people, thought leaders within our community to come and help other SEs out. So you're doing a good job.
Yep, Peter's from Splunk, has a head count about 900, and he was great. Yeah, you definitely have to listen to that.
Yeah, and he was on the show on show 105 here. We've also had almost every single co-founder or participant within SENY on the show. You are not the last. There's still Owen, but you said we shouldn't interview him. Sorry, Owen. Owen, reach out to me separately if you want to be on the show. So good job with that, and it's a good community of SEs. I've enjoyed interacting on your Slack channel.
And
Yeah,
maybe
we appreciate you guys supporting it too.
It's our pleasure.
just to maybe even quickly kind of piggyback off what you said, which is awesome. The fact that, you know, it's a community, like just really want to highlight that point. I want to say John Kerr mentioned that last time he was on, the idea of sales engineering really is a community. There's something about it that's just, I don't know, it makes us a little bit different than the rest or maybe other roles in an organization where whether it be the feelings we have, the types of people we're exposed to, the variety and things that we're doing, it is very unique, and it's really cool that you really created, especially a physical manifestation of that community to bounce ideas off and everything. So, you know, I love that, and I guess for everybody listening, I struggle with it, but you know, get involved in the forums, especially. I know I got to do that more, but it's a nice little way to just to get connected with your peers, become better. And yeah, I love everything you said there. That's great.
Yeah, I think there is a point. There is something to that point. I think people who become SEs, there's a common characteristic of we just enjoy being helpful. So I think it translates well to a community platform because everyone's a peer and they want to help their peer. So it's a natural so really we didn't really do any work. We just became a beacon and everyone built the community, right? It wasn't really our doing.
I don't usually do this during the show, but I want to do a special shout out to Liam Sevier, who sent me a message on LinkedIn. I think he sent you the same message, Benny. And he says, and I quote, "It's been my experience that SEs make some of the best resource for one another." Right? Like the best resource for SEs is another SE, basically. So you're doing that. We're doing that. So yay to us. All right. Enough patting ourselves on the back. Yeah, I'll pat you on the back. You pat me on the back. All right. So the not so fire round. This is the 4 questions we ask every single guest, or almost every single guest. And usually Benny starts, but he never has the questions in front of him. Do you have the questions in front of you, Benny?
I sure do. Thank you for putting them in. So I guess there's maybe a lot of context to ask this into, but maybe just focusing in on your role specifically. What do you love most about it?
Same thing, helping people.
Love it.
Nice. There you go. Question number, I think we could like mic drop right here. What would you do? What's one thing you would change about your job?
Well, the first thing I thought of is I wish I can be physically with people again. But that's not specific to my job.
Well, it is. You wish you could be more interactive with people, but that's a current situation.
Right.
All right. Well, it's that time of year where that's a valid point. So
right.
We can move on if you don't.
You can accept my cop out. All right. Cool.
Yeah. I'll accept your cop
out. All right, this one maybe let's not cop out on, because it could be really useful. So whether it be just from your interactions with your community at Sales Engineers of New York, or even just those that have been beneficial for you, what are some books or tools or other resources that you'd recommend for new SEs, budding SEs, or even experienced ones alike?
Well, as I said before this show, and this is not, I'm not making this on the spot, and this is real. I said, whenever a new SE or someone's interested in being SE asks me, like, what's the best resource? I always point them to this podcast. And that's the truth. And I'm not just saying this because I'm on. Because you guys have been consistently pumping out content for for how long has it been?
I started in February 2018.
Oh wow. So yeah. So by this time you've like covered, like you touched on at least many of the topics, the important topics of an SE. So it's an easy shortcut to say, hey, look, go to that, you'll find out like everything. So I always point folks to here and they're like, oh wow, you're right.
Well, I appreciate you doing that. But you just basically plugged our show on our show to people listening to our show. So,
but you can cut this out and then make it into a promo or something.
There we go. Yes, we can do that. Awesome. Thanks.
Free of charge.
The question before last: what differentiates great SEs from those who are okay or horrible?
Yeah. I would say, well, I'm not going to say being helpful again because, we cover that. But I would say, secondly, is I know a lot of SEs who are technically competent in the past who lack self-awareness and an ability to keep adapting and learn, if that makes sense. So to me, it kind of goes hand in hand. Is you have to understand where your own deficiency, your opportunities of growth is. And then secondly, you have to know how to change it and adapt to it. So I would say that's the number one thing that separates a good one from a bad one.
That's perfect. All right, last question. If people want to reach out to you, where can they do that?
So I'm on LinkedIn. I guess I'm on Twitter as well as GBOND. On GChow on LinkedIn. Hit me up if you have any questions about being a specialist or any other topic.
Right.
We'd also be remiss not to also plug in Sales Engineers of New York, especially located there. But even
Thank you. Yes. My co-founders will kill me if I didn't mention that.
Don't worry.
Please join SENY. So SENY, even if you're not from New York, we're the best place to be a part of the SE community because everyone's super welcoming, and that's the number one feedback that we get, and that's what makes us really proud. But we also have regular monthly. Nowadays it's we have virtual meetups where we invite a super cool guest. And we talk about different topics. So please join us. We have a Slack. We have a LinkedIn group, Sales SENY.
Yep. And your website is salesengineersny.com.
It's salesengineers.org.
Oh, okay.
You'll find us there.
Nice.
And then shout out to our other chapters. So we're branching out to other cities. So we've launched CBO, which is Boston. CBOS. We're also announced yesterday Toronto.
Tour.
Yeah. So we're going international to your hometowns.
International. Yeah. All the way like 5 feet away from New York. But no, that's good.
Now I have a couple of tidbits to go to them. I can ask them about the pinky rings.
Yeah. There you go.
Listen to.
Conversation. Well, that's not Canadian thing. That's just me.
Right.
No. I don't think, what are they called? Hold on. I forgot.
Jukebox something.
Yeah. Postmodern jukebox. I don't think they're Canadian.
Okay.
No.
Well,
Hey.
ask them about that.
Yeah, well, you can still. It's a good song. It's Aerosmith's "Dream On." Have you heard of that?
Oh, it's a cover of that? That's cool.
Yeah, it's a cover of that. All right. Well, G, thanks a lot for coming on. We really appreciate you spending your time with us and plugging our show on our show. So we will see you next time, and I look forward to the next virtual meetup.
Yeah, it's been my pleasure. Thanks for having me on. Thanks, Minnie. Thanks, Merzi.
Of course.
Yeah, man.
See you guys.
Yeah.
See you. All right. Well, that brings us to the end of the show. It's like I enjoy, as much as I enjoy talking to the guests during our interview, it's before and after the interview where like people let loose. Although we can't share it because we stopped recording, but the whole conversation was fun. I just enjoyed how relaxed he was after the show as well. So what did you think about it?
I thought it was really cool. We always cover a lot of topics, but I think today was kind of special because we not only covered, the topic of his role and what he's doing as a specialist, but we also talked about technology around, podcast technology a little bit, kind of what's people's setups and things like that. and even talk a little bit about another community of sales engineers that's very complementary to our own sales engineers of New York. So it was a really cool conversation, and not having ever spoken to a real specialist in the SE or SA world before, it was super educational for me.
So are you saying this episode was special because we talked to a specialist?
Yes, I love it.
Yeah, I'm becoming the dad joke kind of guy. Or a bad joke, I don't know.
I'm a fan personally. Yeah, no, that was great.
Yeah, no, this was fun. Yeah, we talked about a whole bunch of different stuff, right? From what's a specialist versus a generalist, what his role entails, how he gets paid, right? It's very different. And how much in control or not in control he is of the sales process. Although we should have covered that a little bit better, but we'll do another episode with G. But yeah, this was entirely fun, and I love what SENY is doing. Right, they're doing such a good job, and we've interviewed Akshat, Sam Pena, Eric Glick. Now we've interviewed G. There's still Owen. Come on, Owen. And we've interviewed a few members as well, like who show up regularly to those. So good group of people. I would like it if you join both SENY Slack channel and We the SEs forums. I'm on both. I've joined both, and I do both. So yeah, join those.
And you just to kind of finish, or maybe to tie that into what we talked about towards the end of the show a little bit. Sales engineering is a community. It may as well, the more the merrier. Grow your network as many people as you think is not as possible, but as whatever makes sense. And you never know where your network may come in handy down the line. Maybe you have to move somewhere. Maybe you have to move jobs. And the more people in this role, we all like to help each other out. So yeah, join them all.
Yep. All right. Well,
so
I got nothing else to say.
No, fair enough. I guess just before everyone goes, hope you're all staying safe even still, and make sure that you leave a comment and also rate this wherever you're listening to it if you haven't already. And other than that, though, it's all I've got. So with that, this is Benny for Ramsey signing off.
Show notes at wethesalesengineers.com/show110.
Yes. Now we're